from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Producers in the Southeast are picking up the pieces.
You just don't know sometimes what to think or what to do.
How one farmer is finding the courage to rebuild after Hurricane Helen decimated his farm. Can flipping your soil improve your bottom line? Yes, here how it can be done. And Iowa farmers pick up the harvest pace as dry conditions persist.
You're leaving money out there, but we don't have a choice.
The latest on what they're seeing out in the field right now on AgDay.
AgDay is brought to you by Pioneer.
Ben's bins, please hold.
Yeah, Ben's has been busy all day.
Seems like no one can keep up with this new Z series. What did you all put in these seeds?
Science.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Iowa is expected to harvest big corn and soybean crops this year. But how is harvest progressing as concerns grow about the top being taken off yields in drier conditions? AgDay's Michelle Rook spoke with farmers in the state and joins us with the very latest. Michelle, it sounds like so far farmers have been pleasantly surprised.
Despite some adverse weather conditions to start and end the growing season in Iowa, farmers are reporting some outstanding harvest results. In central Iowa, corn yields are better than expected as farmers got a late start to planting and were unsure how the crop would finish with a flash drought to end the season.
We didn't quite know what we were going to have. We had a lot of rain at the beginning of the season, then it turned off hot and dry, and kind of didn't know where things were going to end up. But looks like if you kind of did everything right, and you know, they're definitely paying off. We're seeing from 200 to 250 and on up for some guys.
USDA raised Iowa corn yields 2 bushels per acre to 214 bushels in the October crop report, and it looks like that's being verified in the field.
I'm probably 10% above APH right now.
On corn?
On corn.
However, he admits there are some wide swings in yields.
I've heard corn yields on top of 3 in some places. I've also heard it down to 170 in some places. Depends on the quality of the ground, things like that.
Still, it looks like the late season dryness did not severely impact test weights.
You know, upwards 60 in that area. I mean, 58 to 60 pound test weight. And the corn's super dry right now, so it went from 20% to 12.5%, 13%. It seemed like what was overnight.
On soybeans, some fields also got planted late, resulting in variability. But again, results have exceeded expectations. And USDA also raised Iowa's soybean yields a bushel to 64 bushels per acre in the latest report.
I've heard 45 on some beans, clear up to 80. So I think it just depends on where you're at, what kind of farm you're on, fertility. You know, all the little things can make a big difference on a yield too.
We've had some really good soybean yields around. You know, in the upper 60s on some around here, and that's pretty good win.
The dry weather means a record fast soybean harvest at nearly 2/3 complete, but moisture is at only 8 to 10%, or yields may have been even better. I'm Michelle Rook reporting for AgDay.
It looks like cooler temperatures are on the way for much of the Midwest, and there's even talk of some snow. Meteorologist Matt Engelbrecht has a look ahead.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how this is playing out. Typical fall pattern where we get the shots of cold air are going to be a lot shorter than the warm air. And then as we get deeper into October and November, it flips where we have longer stretches of the cooler, colder air, shorter stretches of the warmer air. Now we're kind of right on the first part of that pattern, and that October 19th to the 23rd, we flip back to above average temperatures in and across the United States. So Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, certainly some cold, chilly air working its way across the United States. But as you see here, by the 19th, which is going to be after the weekend, things are flipping back to at or above. At least the confidence is high for above average temperatures through the Midwest, down here to the south and the southeast, but also through a good portion of the nation. There is some colder air out there. Top left corner of your screen, the first indications of another strong trough trying to take shape up here towards the northwest that will try to come through after the 23rd. And check out the spectacular harvest sunset. Farms in North Dakota. Loglet Farms in North Dakota sharing this one, saying it doesn't get better than this. Beautiful for sure. I'll have more in your forecast coming up.
The challenge of recovering from the devastation brought by Hurricane Milton last week are being made worse for Floridians by ongoing shortages of gasoline and electricity, while crews continue to battle catastrophic flooding from Hurricane Helen in North Carolina. Lee Waldman has an update for us.
After back-to-back hurricanes ripped through Florida, people living there are struggling to sift through the debris left behind.
So much damage was already done. There was less for Milton to do.
Those efforts are hindered by gas shortages. In Tampa, St. Petersburg, as well as Sarasota, where Milton made landfall, about 50% of gas stations have no fuel as of Monday afternoon, according to monitoring website GasBuddy. President Joe Biden toured the Tampa area Sunday to discuss recovery efforts.
FEMA has delivered 1.2 million meals, over 300,000 liters of water, 2 million gallons of fuel.
As of Monday morning, just under 400,000 customers across the state are without power, down from a peak of nearly 3 million, according to PowerOutage.us.
About 75% of the power has been restored across Florida, and most believing that by the end of Tuesday, the vast majority will be online.
Meanwhile, in North Carolina, some FEMA teams are having to pull back on door-to-door outreach to disaster survivors because they're facing threats. In a statement, a FEMA spokesperson said, "For the safety of our dedicated staff and the disaster survivors we're helping, FEMA has made some operational adjustments. Disaster recovery centers will continue to be open as scheduled." I'm Lee Waldman reporting for AgDay.
3 states are working to avoid an animal welfare crisis after one poultry company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Now, we've been keeping you updated on the situation involving Pure Prairie Poultry. Last month, the company filed for bankruptcy in a Minnesota bankruptcy court. However, the bankruptcy was dismissed due to creditor objections. The company then notified authorities it couldn't afford feed for 1.6 million chickens on as many as 50 poultry farms in Iowa, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. Now, Iowa and Minnesota then intervened, stepping in to feed the birds in their states. AgriTalk affiliate WRDN Radio talking with Wisconsin 3rd District Congressman Derek Van Orden.
We're working on a timeline here. So the birds got to continue to be fed. So we're trying to make sure that feed is going to the birds, to the flocks. And then we got to help find a processor to get them processed, and then we have to find out how to reimburse our farmers for what they should have been paid for out of this company.
Now, some farmers in Wisconsin are giving the chickens away because they can't afford to keep and feed them. Others are paying for food out of their own pockets. Pure Prairie is now seeking restructuring options and potential buyers while cutting operations to conserve cash.
Flip Your Soil on AgDay is brought to you by ESN. Hear why farmers across the country trust ESN to protect their nitrogen investment and maximize yield. Learn more at smartnitrogen.com.
Many producers have implemented one or more soil health practices on their operation to flip their soil and have seen return on their investment, but it's a slow process. To achieve quicker results and payback, it takes a holistic approach, which includes livestock. This is where NRCS is on the ground providing technical and financial assistance.
So in regards to soil health, initiatives and working with our environmental quality incentives program, we're doing just grazing as far as our prescribed grazing methods and cross fencing, water facilities, anything we can do to help support getting those cattle up and around, but also on crop ground as well, and trying to reintroduce cattle into the crop ground and the holistic system. Really looking at regenerative agriculture.
In fact, he says integrating livestock is one of the most important and quickest ways to build soil biology and soil health improvements. Well, it was a tough start to the week for grain markets. We'll talk about why coming up next in Markets Now. And later, the aftermath of Hurricane Helen left a tall task for some Georgia farmers as they work toward recovery from the historic storm. That's for today in the country.
Register now for the Milk Business Conference, December 10th and 11th in Vegas, for a chance to win tickets to the National Finals Rodeo while in town.
Grains continued to slide on Monday while cattle fought to make some gains. Michelle Rook is back with more in Markets Now.
Grains out closing lower on Monday. Kent Beadle is back with analysis and some pressure to start off with some follow-through selling after a lower day on Friday. But, how much of it was really tied to some of the bearishness in the outside markets, Kent?
Well, we did have continued strength in the U.S. dollar. And of course, that strength actually started about 8 or 9 sessions ago, ahead of the jobs report, which a lot of traders thought was going to be strong. And of course it was. And it continued all last week, culminating with the CPI report, which was a little stronger than expected.
And it looks like the markets may have been removing some weather premium, right?
Absolutely. In the southwest part of the plains, hardwood winter wheat areas, we do have some rainfall now in the forecast for late this week into this upcoming weekend. And clearly, they really do need that for their newly planted wheat or wheat that they still would like to get into the ground.
Plus, we're still watching South America, though, right? And possible rains there.
Yeah, the forecast for Mato Grosso, Bahia, Tocantins has gotten a little bit wetter. Again, some of the anomalies are now showing heavier than expected precipitation. I do have to warn that we've had forecasts like that now for the better part of 2 weeks, and I think that the rainfall to date has been a little bit underwhelming. There have been pockets of areas in Mato Grosso that have gotten good rains, but there are an awful lot of areas that still need to get some.
I also have to ask you, are the funds back selling?
So, the harvest is ongoing, of course, and we're moving now into that period. We'll find out on Tuesday evening how far we are, but we're moving rapidly, and we're getting into the last half of harvest. And so if there's some forced selling from farmers, it's going to come here in the next 2 to 3 weeks. I do think that the large speculator who's covered a large portion of their short position in both corn and beans is probably selling a little bit ahead of that likely forced selling from the farmer.
All right, thanks so much for that analysis, Kent Beadle, Paradigm Futures. We'll have more AgDay coming up.
I talked about it earlier, a pocket, and it's really a small pocket of cold, dry air working across the United States. Now, in terms of coverage, it's pretty big, but in terms of depth and the ability for it to anchor across the United States, relatively shallow. So I'll show you what I mean. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we'll have some cool, cold, dry air across the United States working towards the east. A ridge is going to build back in with the warmth, and that warmth is going to time out to be as early as Wednesday for parts of the Dakotas into Texas and Oklahoma. And then by Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, you see how far north these white lines get. By Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, this is going to spread back out here towards the east. So earlier we looked at a map that indicated that ridge developing over the United States with that trough trying to come through. We're all the way into Monday, and there's good indication of above average high temperatures through the weekend and next week. Now, this little piece of energy that you see here could have bigger implications depending on how strong this ridge is. If it's a dominant ridge, typically as we go deeper into October and November, the ridge or the ridges traditionally aren't as strong. So the troughs are able to come through and suppress the ridge and bring in that cooler, drier air. That's what this is indicating, is that ridge is still a little strong by next Monday and Tuesday, making this another shallow trough with the chance of maybe 3 or 4 days of cooler weather across the United States. But we're still going towards above average high temperatures once we get on the other side of the weekend, this Saturday and Sunday, and into next week. So again, that's the jet stream coming up on Monday at the surface. This is Tuesday at 7 a.m. Still have some showers working through with that cutoff low before that ridge tries to build in with some cool, if not cold, mornings. We'll start off in Montana. Lothair, or is it Lothair? 73 degrees. We'll try it again. Lothair or Lothair. Kentucky, cloudy, high of 56. Lothair, Lothair, not a mistake. Georgia, high of 75 degrees.
Six California farm workers have now tested positive for avian flu. It represents 20 human cases in the U.S. since March 2 of the cases originated from the same Central Valley farm. Now, state officials say the virus appears to be spreading via animal to human transmission by dairy cows. And they say all of the human cases have mild symptoms. However, California health officials say they have also been notified about 1 additional possible human case also in the Central Valley region. The case was sent to the CDC for confirmation. So far, there have been 300 dairy herds impacted by the virus in 14 states. Officials continue to say the risk to the general public of getting sick remains low and the milk supply remains safe. An Illinois-based dairy cooperative has added to its network of dairy plants. Prairie Farms Dairy recently acquired the Smith Foods manufacturing facilities in Orrville, Ohio. Prairie Farm CEO says it was an easy decision because the Orrville facilities complement its network of dairy plants and expands its Ohio footprint. Leaders went on to say they look forward to serving Smith Foods' loyal customers with the same exceptional local dairy products and community support. The co-op is made up of 600 farm families. Cleanup work is well underway in Georgia following Hurricane Helene. Up next, how far one farmer has yet to travel on the road to recovery today in the country. Row crop farmers in South Georgia were already struggling, but Hurricane Helene made things even worse. John Holcomb of the Georgia Farm Monitor reports on how one farmer is fighting to save what little he has left.
Imagine working your entire life for something and then, in what feels like an instant, it gets destroyed by a hurricane. For some, that's hard to imagine. However, for many across southeast Georgia, like Daniel Johnson, a row crop farmer in Pierce County, it very much is a reality.
We've got damage. We've got some home damage. We've got shelter damage, tobacco barn damage. The good thing is my family's safe. That's what it's all about. We can replace material things, but my family's safe. And but we pray for everybody's safety and maybe everything can get back to normal. You know, I don't know what normal is no more, but agriculture is hurting. The community's hurting as a whole. Agriculture was already hurting because of crop prices and input costs, but now we've took a double hit. And Tropical Storm Debbie was pretty devastating to us for our crops, and never dreamed it'd all come at one time, you know, with 30 days apart, you might as well say.
According to Johnson, what makes this storm so devastating is how it basically kicked farmers when they were already down. As he says, the year as a whole has been horrific. And now, as you can see, what crop they have been able to grow has now been blown away.
Cotton was already at a point that it was unprofitable. So, you know, every bowl we could pick to save was going to be a plus for us. And now we don't have that, you know. I think we'll still be able to pick some cotton. Some is probably not going to be harvestable, some of this early stuff. But it's already been through drowning, droughts, and tropical storms. So we're beat from the get-go. What people don't understand is 20 years ago, commodity prices were the same as they are today, if not better.
For now, Johnson says he has no choice but to continue on, as this year's peanuts are just days away from being ready to harvest. But for cotton, he says it's too early to tell if he'll be able to or if it's even worth harvesting.
It's going to be a wait and see. Yeah, if we had an average crop, we're 40–50% less than what we had. There again, if we can save some of it, but is it going to cost more to save it than we're going to make? We know that's going to happen already. If we picked a full crop, we was going to lose money. Right. But hey, we planted it, we got it. We got to make the best of it, and just hope the economy turns, things change. It's kind of it'll kind of take the words away from you because you just don't know sometimes what to think or what to do.
However, despite the devastation, Johnson is still hopeful and optimistic everything will work out for them in the end.
It's just a wait and see game, I'm gonna say. We hope we all come out better than what we are, you know, but we'll overcome it somehow. This ain't the first rodeo. You know, we've had storms before, but nothing like a year like this. Let's say that.
Reporting in Alma for the Farm Monitor, I'm John Holcomb.
And our thanks to John Holcomb and the Georgia Farm Monitor for sharing that update. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day on Farm Country.